The sky over the rolling fields of eastern Kansas turned blacker than coal just after sunset, the wind bending corn stalks like blades of grass. And Eli, a grizzled farmer with hands like cracked leather and a heart stitched together by years of solitude, buttoned up his flannel and stared out across the coming chaos with a gut-deep feeling something was wrong. It wasn't just the weather. Storms rolled through here all the time, but this one carried a weight in the air that pressed down on him like guilt. Thunder growled low and mean across the plains as if the heavens were dragging chains, and Eli moved quickly, locking down his barn, securing loose tools, muttering to himself about the damn unpredictability of nature. His dog Rusty barked at nothing, eyes wide, ears twitching, the kind of animal instinct that knows something's off before you do. Lightning cracked, so close it lit up the entire valley like a camera flash, and in that brief instant, Eli saw it, something in the field, something not supposed to be there. He grabbed his lantern and a slicker, trudged through the driving rain, mud sucking at his boots with every step, and Rusty howled again, now frantic. As Eli got closer, the shape came into focus, a twisted wreck of metal, the unmistakable silhouette of a downed aircraft. Military by the look of it, half buried in his north field. His breath caught. He hadn't seen a plane that low in these parts since his brother left for Vietnam. He rushed forward, heart pounding, calling out, "Hey, anyone alive in there?" Thunder answered back, louder now, but then movement. A hand, bloodied, reaching. Eli didn't hesitate. He climbed over the debris, pulling aside torn metal and wires, and found him. A man in a torn flight suit, helmet cracked, barely conscious, blinking through blood and rain. "Jesus, son, you're lucky you're breathing," Eli muttered, as the man whispered something unintelligible and slumped. No way was Eli letting someone die out here, storm or not. He heaved the man's arm over his shoulders and half carried, half dragged him back to the farmhouse, swearing the whole way. The pilot groaned, muttered what sounded like classified in coordinates, but Eli just kept moving, soaking wet, adrenaline replacing exhaustion. Once inside, he cleared the dining table and laid the pilot down, grabbing his first aid kit, muttering curses about not being a damn doctor. Rusty hovered nervously, whining. Eli cleaned a gash on the man's head, wrapped a bandage, and tried to check for fractures with the care of someone who's patched up injured livestock more times than he can count. The man came to briefly, looked around wildly, tried to rise. "Easy now, you're safe," Eli said gruffly. "Crashed out near the silo. Lucky I found you." The pilot said nothing, just nodded once and slipped out again. Eli lit the fire, stripped the man of his soaked flight gear, dried what he could, and warmed the room. The storm raged on. Trees outside cracked, one falling near the barn, but Eli didn't care. He had a stranger in his home, a stranger in a uniform, and questions piling up like storm clouds. Hours passed. The pilot stirred in and out of consciousness, muttering things Eli didn't understand. Military jargon, names, warnings. At some point, he clutched Eli's wrist and whispered, "Don't call it in, not yet." And Eli, despite every instinct, nodded. He knew enough about the world to know some storms weren't weather. He sat in the rocking chair that night, shotgun across his lap, eyes flicking between the unconscious pilot and the shadows dancing on the walls, wondering what the hell had landed on his property and what it would bring with it when the storm passed. The storm didn't let up the next day or the day after that. It hung over Eli's farm like a curse. Thunder rolling every few minutes, wind shaking the windows, and rain slamming down hard enough to drown the cornfields. The power went out within hours of the pilot's arrival, so Eli rigged up old oil lamps and hauled in firewood like it was wartime. The generator was shot. He hadn't used it since 2009, and it never liked the cold anyway. The pilot, still mostly out of it, drifted in and out of feverish sleep, whispering fragmented phrases that hinted at a mission gone wrong. Eyes on the convoy. Target was moving. Didn't know it was them. Eli didn't ask questions. Not yet. He figured when a man looked that broken, the last thing he needed was interrogation. Instead, he focused on survival. He brought out his mama's cast iron pot, boiled rainwater to purify it, and made soup from what little he had. Potatoes, beans, jerky he'd cured back in spring. He spoon-fed the pilot like he used to do for Rusty when he was just a pup. On the third day, the man finally sat up under his own power, eyes glassy but aware. "Name's Walker," he said hoarsely. "Captain." Eli raised a brow. "Walker, huh? Well, I'm Eli. Just a farmer with too many acres and not enough sense to move somewhere warm." They didn't say much after that, but it was a start. Walker tried to stand once, legs shaking like a newborn calf, and Eli caught him before he hit the floor. "You military types sure crash hard," Eli muttered, easing him back into bed. The pilot cracked a weak smile. Better than crashing soft. They spent hours in silence, punctuated only by the storm's wrath outside. Eli found himself watching Walker, his hands the way he gripped the edge of the blanket like it might disappear, his eyes scanning the room as if it were enemy territory. He was trained, that was clear, but there was something else. Something coiled tight inside him, like a man running from more than wreckage. On the fourth night, over a bowl of hot beans and cornbread, Walker finally asked, "Why didn't you call it in?" Eli shrugged. "Didn't seem like you wanted me to. Besides, I don't much trust the suits these days." Walker studied him for a long time before nodding. That night, Walker talked in his sleep. Names, coordinates, orders. Eli didn't sleep much, just listened, and started jotting down what he could on a notepad he kept by the wood stove. Not to report, just to keep track. By the fifth day, the road was a river, the phone lines were down, and Rusty refused to go near the barn. "Foxes wouldn't survive out there," Eli said, wrapping another blanket around Walker. "But we're still kicking." They played checkers by lamplight when Walker was strong enough to sit upright. Eli talked about his crops, the droughts, the one tornado that twisted his silo back in '98. Walker shared little, but enough. He'd flown missions in places Eli couldn't pronounce, seen things that kept him up nights. Once, after a particularly long silence, Walker said, "I was supposed to be somewhere else. Didn't know I'd end up here." Eli replied, "Funny thing about Kansas, people either pass through it or get stuck in it. Sounds like you did both." Walker laughed for the first time, a low, tired sound that made Eli realize how long it had been since laughter filled the house. They repaired the old ham radio together, Walker's fingers moving deftly over wires and resistors. "You good with tech?" Eli asked. "You learn quick when the wrong frequency can kill you," Walker said, cryptic as ever. They failed to get a signal, but it didn't matter. Eli felt something strange growing. Trust, maybe. A bond forged in fire and wind. They talked about things that mattered. Loss, regret, how both men had outlived their purpose in some way. On the sixth day, Walker helped chop kindling, one-handed, leaning on the axe like a crutch, and Eli thought, "Damn fool might make a decent farmhand if he ever quits the sky." That night, over whiskey Eli had been saving since his brother died, they sat on the porch under the temporary calm between storms, and Walker said, "There's more coming, Eli. Not weather, people." Eli sipped his drink, eyes narrowed. "Then we better be ready." The pilot nodded, and in that moment, Eli realized this man wasn't just recovering, he was waiting, hiding, and now Eli was hiding him. The storm finally broke on the seventh day with a sunrise so blindingly gold, it made the soaked earth look like a painting. But the silence that followed felt heavier than thunder. Eli stepped outside to find broken branches, half the fence collapsed, and one of his tractors with a tree on top of it. But he couldn't stop thinking about the man inside his house. Walker had recovered fast. Too fast for someone who took that kind of hit. And even with the limp in his step and the bandage still on his brow, there was something precise in the way he moved, like muscle memory trained for war. Eli figured the guy was just one of those elite types, maybe a Navy flyer, maybe special ops, but he hadn't pressed until he did. It started with the trunk. While Walker was outside helping Eli clear some of the storm debris, Eli went to stow away the pilot's torn uniform and gear in the back closet until he noticed the steel case. Hidden under the tattered flight suit, it was about the size of a briefcase, matte black, reinforced corners, with no handles or labels, just a tiny keypad on one end and an emblem pressed into the top, an eagle clutching lightning bolts. It wasn't Air Force standard. Eli hesitated. He knew enough to know better than to snoop, but something had been gnawing at him since the first night. Walker's nerves weren't just from a crash. This man was scared of something bigger. When he asked Walker about it later that evening, over a dinner of fried eggs and last summer's canned peaches, the pilot just said, "Don't worry about that case, just gear." Eli nodded, said nothing, but the words didn't sit right. That night, long after Walker fell asleep in the old guest bed, Eli sat in the kitchen, staring at the case. He told himself he wasn't a thief, just a concerned citizen, but deep down he knew he was crossing a line. Still, something in Walker's behavior didn't track. He wasn't some flyboy caught in bad weather. So Eli retrieved a screwdriver, flipped the back panel, and worked until a faint click released a hidden latch. The lid creaked open just enough to reveal the contents, and what he saw made his blood go cold. Inside, sealed under a transparent compression layer, were three things: a biometric ID badge with Walker's full name, General Marcus D. Walker, United States Special Command, alongside a crimson envelope marked Eyes Only, and a secure satellite transmitter with its own battery and encryption unit. General. Eli stared at the title. That wasn't just high rank. That was the kind of position people didn't walk around unguarded. A general hiding in a storm-battered farmhouse, carrying government-grade encryption tools and classified documents? What the hell had this man done? Eli quickly shut the case and placed it back where he found it, hands trembling slightly. The next morning, he tried to act normal, making jokes, pouring strong coffee. But Walker's eyes studied him just a little longer than usual. The game was up, and both men knew it. Midway through chopping wood, Walker said flatly, "You opened it, didn't you?" Eli paused, axe midair. "I did." Silence followed. Not angry silence, calculating. Walker didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "You weren't supposed to see that." Eli leaned on the axe. "Well, you weren't supposed to crash into my cornfield either. But here we are." They stared at each other for a long time before Walker sighed. "You want to know why I'm here?" Eli nodded. Walker rubbed his temples, his voice low, like every word cost him. "I was on a mission. A surveillance op turned into a black bag operation. People died. People we weren't supposed to be watching. There's a file in that case that proves it. Names, coordinates, command orders. If I don't deliver it to someone I trust, people will erase it. And me." Eli sat down on a stump, processing. "So you're not just lost, you're running." Walker didn't deny it. "They tried to kill me before I hit your field. That storm saved me." The weight of it all hit Eli then. Not just the risk, but the magnitude. He'd been harboring a fugitive general. He'd spoon-fed soup to a man with national secrets. "Why me?" Eli asked. "Why not just get picked up?" Walker looked at him, eyes tired and sharp. "Because the moment I call for help, the people listening will be the ones trying to finish the job. I needed to disappear until I could figure out who I could trust." Eli ran a hand through his hair. "And you trust me?" Walker nodded. "I didn't, but I do now." There was a long silence. The wind had picked up again, a soft whisper through the barn slats. Eli looked out across the flat horizon, as if waiting for something to appear. "This file? How bad is it?" "Bad enough that 3 nations want it destroyed. Bad enough to rewrite headlines if it ever got out." Eli stood slowly. "Well, I ain't no patriot, but I know a dirty play when I see one. You're staying here until you figure out your next move. And if they come," he looked over at the general, "we'll deal with it." And with that, Eli, just a farmer who once kept to himself, became the keeper of one of the nation's most dangerous secrets. The calm after the storm lasted exactly 2 days. 2 days of uneasy peace, of sharpening tools and fixing fences, with the distant weight of a target painted on the roof. Eli didn't say it aloud, but he knew it. The second he found out Walker was a general carrying sensitive intelligence, they were living on borrowed time. The rains had washed clean the roads, but something else had arrived in their place. An unsettling quiet, a buzz in the air that made Rusty growl at shadows and made Eli check his rifle twice before sunset. On the 3rd morning, Walker was out back, trying to rewire the old satellite dish when he froze. "Drone," he muttered, eyes following a barely visible shape in the sky. Silent, dark, far too steady to be wildlife. Eli looked up and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "How sure?" Walker didn't answer. He just started packing. The general, who had once limped, now moved fast, grabbing the steel case, yanking cords from the ham radio, securing documents in vacuum-sealed pouches. "We've got 12 hours, maybe less," he said. "If they're watching, then they're already moving." And sure enough, just past noon, the hum of a government SUV kicked up dust on the gravel road a mile out. Eli saw it through the binoculars. Black, tinted windows, unmarked plates. Not sheriff's department, not local. "Hell," he said. "This ain't just retrieval. This is a sweep." Walker nodded. "They'll play it polite at first. Questions, smiles, but make no mistake, they're here to clean house." Eli loaded his shotgun and opened the storm cellar, stashing supplies. "They want to play polite? I'll serve 'em sweet tea and lies." They didn't have to wait long. At 3:47 p.m., 2 men knocked at the door, dressed in plain black coats with badges that said Federal Communications Task Force, which was about as fake as a $3 bill. Eli opened with a grin. "Afternoon, boys. Bit off the beaten path, ain't ya?" The taller one smiled back. "Just here to check on any emergency transmissions from the storm. Some rogue frequencies were bouncing in this area. Mind if we take a look around?" Eli stepped aside. "Help yourselves. Don't trip on the dog." Rusty growled on cue, low and menacing. The agents moved quickly, too quickly for men who didn't know what they were looking for. One headed straight for the back room. The other lingered near the kitchen, eyes scanning every detail. Boots by the door, mud patterns on the floor, even the coffee mug on the table. They were reading the room like a crime scene. And then Walker stepped out, not hiding, not pretending, just standing tall in Eli's old denim jacket, the steel case slung over his shoulder. "Afternoon, gentlemen," he said. Both agents stiffened. "General Walker," one of them said flatly, "didn't expect you'd still be breathing." "Surprise," Walker replied. The tension in the room grew like a storm front. "You're a long way from Langley." The agent didn't blink. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." Walker stepped forward. "I've got the truth. And last I checked, that wasn't government property." The agent moved to his radio, but before he could speak, Eli leveled his shotgun. "I think we're done talking." The agents raised their hands slowly. "Easy, old man," the tall one said. "You're interfering with federal operations." "I'm protecting my guest," Eli growled. "And last I checked, Kansas still respects property rights." They didn't press it. Not yet. They left without incident, but Walker didn't look relieved. "They'll be back, and next time, they won't knock." That night, they didn't sleep. They set up tripwires at the edge of the property. Walker buried the satellite unit in a waterproof case under the barn. Eli loaded every weapon he had, rifles, pistols, even the old Civil War bayonet his grandfather had kept. "You really think they'll come in shooting?" he asked. Walker didn't hesitate. "They won't take chances. If they think I'll talk, they'll erase me and anyone in their way." Eli sat down, lit a cigarette he hadn't touched in years. So be it. The next morning, the horizon flickered. Not vehicles, helos. Two, low and fast, approaching from the north. They ducked beneath radar, black as oil against the sunrise. "We've got 5 minutes," Walker said. "You still in?" Eli grabbed his hat. "Been in since you crashed, son." The battle hadn't started yet, but they both felt it coming. Not a fight for land or pride. This was a fight for the truth, for survival, for the right to stand against a machine that devoured its own. And on a little farmhouse in Kansas, a farmer and a fugitive general prepared for war. When the first helicopter shadow passed over the barn, Eli and Walker were already in position, one on the second floor with a scoped rifle, the other near the kitchen window behind a barricade of flipped-over furniture, sandbags made from feed sacks, and rusted scrap metal hammered into makeshift armor. The air trembled with rotor wash, loose dirt spiraled across the yard, and Rusty had taken cover under the crawl space, barking like the world was ending. "No insignias," Walker said, peering through his binoculars. "Private contractors, probably ghost units on a government leash." "You mean mercs," Eli replied, not breaking his aim. "People paid to pretend they're not part of anything official. Real convenient." The first squad dropped just beyond the tree line. 6 men in tactical gear, silent, faces masked, rifles gleaming. They moved like wolves, fanned out around the property. Walker took a breath. "They'll go for the barn first. They think I'm hiding in the loft." Eli nodded. "Then let's make that barn bite back." Moments later, as predicted, 3 shadows breached the side door of the barn and triggered a tripwire that Eli had rigged with a tank of fertilizer in an old car battery. The explosion wasn't lethal, but it was loud and blinding, throwing 2 of the men against the wall and lighting the dry hay like a bonfire. The third stumbled out, gasping, only to be dropped by a beanbag round from Walker's modified shotgun. "Don't want 'em dead yet," Walker said. "We need answers first." But the rest didn't wait. Gunfire erupted from the south field. Suppressive, controlled, professional. Bullets pelted the side of the house like hailstones. Eli ducked, reloaded, and returned fire, the old Remington kicking hard against his shoulder. "Didn't think I'd be in a firefight on a Tuesday," he muttered. "I was hoping for a quiet day baling hay." Walker grinned. "Welcome to my world." Inside the farmhouse, they turned every room into a position. Pots of boiling oil waited by upstairs windows, tripwires linked to loudspeakers blaring static from an old boombox. Even Rusty had a job, carrying notes and extra ammo between rooms, with a harness Walker had rigged from an old saddle strap. The mercs regrouped and tried to flank the east side, but Walker anticipated it. He'd planted steel fence posts tipped with spikes under a camouflage tarp. 2 more attackers went down, screaming. "That's 4, Eli counted. 2 more unaccounted for." The house shook again. A flash bang launched through the living room window. Eli dove behind the couch, ears ringing, vision swimming, but Walker, wearing a makeshift welder's mask, rushed the door with a fire extinguisher in one hand and a pistol in the other. The gas from the extinguisher confused the infrared optics of the incoming soldier, just long enough for Walker to disarm him with a shot to the knee. "Who sent you?" Walker barked. The man only spat blood and passed out. "Useless." The last enemy was smarter. He climbed onto the roof unnoticed and dropped through the attic hatch. Eli heard the thud too late. Walker turned, but the merc had already lunged, tackling him into the pantry with a crash of jars and shelves. They fought viciously, close quarters, fists and elbows, breaking shelves and slamming into the walls. Eli kicked the door open and leveled his rifle, but Walker roared, "Don't shoot!" He twisted, got an arm around the man's throat, and finally slammed him unconscious against the fridge. The silence that followed was deafening. The yard was smoke, the barn was embers, and 5 mercs were unconscious or crippled on Eli's property. "They'll send more," Walker said. wiping blood from his mouth. They know I'm alive. Then we make this place a damn fortress, Eli replied. I've got traps I haven't even shown you yet. You ever seen a pitchfork cannon? Walker blinked. You've weaponized a pitchfork? Buddy, I live in Kansas. What else was I going to do? They shared a laugh, one born of madness and exhaustion, and then got back to work. They bound the wounded men with barbed wire and dragged them into the storm cellar. From the one still conscious, Walker got a name, Project Crucible, a black ops cleanup initiative meant to silence whistleblowers and terminate leaks before they reach the public. They're not here for me, Walker realized. They're here for the evidence. Eli nodded slowly. Then we hold the evidence, and we hold the line. They moved the steel case to the silo, rigged it with a backup battery and a radio ping that could upload the files if the signal went live for 60 seconds. Insurance, Walker said. If they kill me, the world finds out. If they kill us, Eli corrected. Walker looked at the farmer, mud-stained, bleeding, middle-aged with nothing to gain and everything to lose, and felt a rare thing in his chest. Respect, almost reverence. You didn't sign up for this, Eli smiled grimly. I didn't, but I'm in it now, and if they want this farm, they're going to have to burn it to the ground. They sat on the porch that night with rifles on their laps, scanning the horizon, and the wind carried no storm this time, just the scent of smoke, oil, and change. The sun rose slow over the battered farm, painting golden light across burnt wood, trampled crops, and shattered windows that had once framed quiet mornings and coffee steam. The air smelled of gunpowder and dew. Eli sat on the porch with Rusty curled at his feet, both of them still as statues, watching the horizon for movement. Inside the farmhouse, Walker patched a cracked window with duct tape, his left arm in a sling from the rooftop brawl, his eyes sharp but tired. They'd won the fight, or at least survived it, but the war wasn't over. Not even close. The 5 mercs were gone now. In the dead of night, Walker had called in a favor to a trusted contact who arrived in a nondescript black van. Eyes wary, voice low, credentials real. They'll be moved, Walker had told Eli. Somewhere safe, somewhere they can't spin this. Eli didn't ask where. He didn't need to. The steel case was still in the silo, but it wasn't going to stay there long. Walker had made contact with a journalist, one of the rare few not under government thumb, someone who had spent the last decade trying to drag truth into daylight. He's got a drop in Denver, Walker explained. I'll get it there, but I need to vanish afterward. Eli didn't like it. He'd grown used to the general's gruff humor, his meticulous order, the calm edge of danger that now seemed woven into the land like a permanent scar. You leave. I expect you'll stay gone, Eli said one evening, not looking up from his wood carving. That's the plan, Walker replied. They'll keep looking for me, but I can't put you in the crosshairs again, Eli grunted. Too late for that. They fell into silence, the kind only shared between men who had faced death together, who had bled on the same floorboards, buried the same secrets under scorched soil. The next morning, Walker shaved, cut his hair with Eli's rusty clippers, and dressed in civilian clothes borrowed from Eli's closet. The transformation was eerie. The soldier vanished, replaced by a man who might have been a trucker or a retired teacher. Name? Eli asked. Don't have one anymore, Walker said. That's the point. He handed Eli a USB drive sealed in a plastic pouch. If something happens to me, this goes to the address on the back of that envelope. You don't trust the journalist? Walker looked him dead in the eye. I trust you more. And that was the end of it, or so Eli thought. But the day after Walker disappeared down the dirt road in Eli's old pickup, a second envelope arrived, delivered by a kid on a dirt bike, no return address. Inside was a bank key, coordinates scribbled in military shorthand, and a note in tight, neat writing, for when you're ready to stop farming lies. The coordinates led to a private airstrip 60 miles north, where a storage locker held a flight-ready Cessna, fueled and registered under a shell corporation, along with a folder thick with bank accounts, offshore holdings, and one document that made Eli's knees go weak, a signed transfer of ownership for 40 acres of protected wilderness in Montana. For the farm you always wanted, the note said. No secrets, just sky. Eli stood there for a long time, dust swirling around his boots, staring at the life someone had handed him like a favor repaid in full. He didn't ask where Walker had gotten the money, or the plane, or the land. He knew. Somewhere between the classified files and years of back-channel missions, the general had made preparations for a future he might never see. but one he wanted to pass on. Over the next few weeks, Eli rebuilt, not just fences and windows, but himself. He tore down the burned barn and rebuilt it better. He fixed the generator. He called his estranged niece just to hear someone say his name. He even started writing again, the first chapters of a memoir he'd never publish, but needed to write. People came around, neighbors with questions about the noise, the fires, the helicopters. He said it was a training accident, tornado drills. Some shook their heads, some nodded like they'd seen stranger things. None pressed. Months passed. One morning, Eli walked into the local bank with that key and walked out with a check that had more zeros than he'd ever seen. He didn't tell anyone, just smiled, tipped his hat, and drove to the post office. The drop had gone through. The journalist published the story, a series of exposés that rocked the defense world, toppled a few careers, made others vanish. Project Crucible was disbanded, disavowed, denied, but the truth was out. Eli read every word. Then he burned the paper. No need to keep trophies. On the one-year anniversary of the crash, he flew the Cessna north, took Rusty, packed light, and left a note on the farmhouse door that said, "Gone to grow something honest." In Montana, the wilderness welcomed him. Trees thick with snow, sky endless and quiet, no gunfire, no smoke. Just the sound of wind in the pines and the knowledge that somewhere out there, a man named Walker was still running, still fighting, but not alone anymore. And Eli, the farmer who once patched up a stranger in the middle of a storm, finally found peace on soil no one could take from him.